Hi, and welcome to Good, Fast, Cheap, Pick 3 lightweight solutions for website developers. As you can see here, my name is Jordan Stepinski, and I'm a software engineer here at MongoDB.
And I'm Shiri Cabral, a product manager here at MongoDB. Today we're going to be talking about how we've solved some common website problems on the very website that we work on, MongoDB's Developer Hub. The specific issues that we're going to cover are getting information from third-party sites, including storing that data in a database, storing secrets securely and efficiently, storing and processing user-submitted data, and adding a webhook so our site can be an API.
We're going to show you the details of the challenges that we face and how we solve them by taking you with us to go back in time and problem solve.
So here we are back in time. Hey Jordan, how you doing? First up on the planning agenda is talking about content types. The articles on Developer Hub are great. Our developer advocates are doing great work. They're writing up a storm, but they also have tutorials on YouTube. Can we add those YouTube videos onto our website among all the articles? How's that usually done?
Well, usually there's some kind of API, so I'm hoping YouTube has some API that we can, read some documentation about, and that would provide us a way to grab those videos, consume it in our application, and render them in our own custom front end.
Oh, they absolutely have an API. Most content providers do for this exact scenario. You want to get your video information into your own website.
Yeah, so we could set up like an HTTP GET request using Fetch or something like that, and should be good to go.
Great, pretty standard getting content from an API. So we just get all that information and make videos have their own page, just like articles, right? Easy peasy?
Yeah, but Sherry, one thing to think about is API limits, because YouTube doesn't just let you use their service as much as you want. Sometimes they impose a quota or limit in which we have to, keep our number of requests per month below a certain threshold. So we need to do our due diligence of caching that information somewhere safely.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading with YouTube, you have to pay if you use more than a certain amount of requests per month. So, you know me, if we want to cache data, especially we're going to save money, we're going to do that in a database. So, is there an easy way that we could save that in Atlas, our cloud hosted MongoDB service?
Yeah, we could use MongoDB Atlas, but you know what? We should also use MongoDB Realm together to help avoid those API limits.
How would we do that?
So MongoDB Realm provides this concept of functions. We would construct a function that would go to the YouTube API, pull in that information, and then interact with our Atlas cluster to store and cache that data.
That sounds really great, but we don't have time for you to learn a whole new language or a whole new interface to use.
Well, fortunately, MongoDB Realm Shiri supports JavaScript code. So for us, there's not a lot of learning curve for a front-end person to go in and write some logic to interact with YouTube and then to store that data into Realm. And it's available from within Realm, so we can take advantage of things like using other functions and triggers.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you also use Realm functions in your client-side app?
You can actually. You can go into your client-side app and call that Realm function directly using one of the SDKs. But here, maybe we'll just keep it up in MongoDB Realm in the cloud and use a trigger or something like that.
Yeah, I think that works best for this particular use case because we want to get the data like, every so often, like once or twice a day, just kind of upload with the new videos up onto our site. And you mentioned doing it with a trigger. From my experience with databases, triggers are usually kind of something like insert, update, or delete kind of action based, or it could be schedule based. Is that how they work with Realm too?
That's right. You can work on insert, update, delete actions with your connected Atlas cluster, or you can schedule them to run at certain intervals during the day.
Great. So how do the functions work?
Well, let me show you. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, I see a save YouTube data thing. Yeah.
Yep, I wrote a quick function here called save YouTube data. And what it does is it interacts with Atlas, interacts with the YouTube API to pull in that data and save it. So what we do on line 2 is we use a Realm built-in service called context services get, which allows us to interact with our connected Atlas cluster. So line 2, we get the collection there. Line 3 is where we use context.http.get, which is a Realm method that allows us to interact with an HTTP endpoint. In this case, we'll use the YouTube API. And then on line 4, we take that data, iterate through it, and we call the insert one command to insert all of this stuff into our connected Atlas cluster. And that's it. That's all we need to do.
Wow, that couldn't be easier. It's just insert one and done, and that connection is one line on line 2. Wow, That looks like it saves a lot of hassle and boring lines of like plumbing code because the database connectivity is just, it's done for you.
Yeah, we just have to spend time figuring out how to work with the YouTube API, but all of that plumbing is built in for us.
That's pretty cool. So how does that function get called?
So we'll set up a trigger. So with a trigger, what you can do in the Realm UI is click on Add a Trigger, and it looks like this UI here that you can see on my screen. So we want to do a scheduled trigger, and we'll give it the name of Cache YouTube Data. And we also want to choose a schedule type. So we'll pick Basic, and we want this to run once every 12 hours. We choose our function, and then we're all set to go. That's it.
Wow, that's really great and easy to set up. So I know from experience that setting up an Atlas database is super quick. And you were saying that setting up Realm only took you like 10 minutes to spin up. And that database connectivity done for you is amazing. So we used Realm functions and triggers to cache our content in our Atlas database, avoiding unnecessary API calls. And we used Realm functions and triggers to do that, coding the same API call you normally would using JavaScript. So, we talk about like good, fast, cheap. So how much did this cost?
Well, fortunately, Shiri, I didn't even have to bust out my credit card because Realm and Atlas offer a really generous free tier of 500 megabytes of space and up to 1 million requests per month on Realm. So this was well within our needs here.
Wow, free is definitely the right cost for us. Fantastic.
So here you can see the Dev Hub and what those videos look like now. So if you look closely, you see that YouTube video right there, Shiri.
Wow, there it is right there, a little YouTube video next to our articles.
But one thing I was thinking about is we have YouTube content, but our developer advocates also like to use Twitch. So they'll stream on Twitch and they have archives from Twitch. We should really feature that content on the Dev Hub as well. So I'm assuming we can just use that API in the same way.
Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing? Unfortunately, Twitch doesn't allow anyone to just use the API to get content. You have to be authenticated to get that information that we need.
I see. Well, this seems a little tough. Do you have any thoughts on maybe how we can approach this?
Well, we can use a private access token for our application to authenticate against the API. That's what Twitch will give us. GitHub and Twitter also have this kind of idea where you can get a private access token instead of having to use like a username and password, which people don't want to save, for obvious reasons. So it is something that we may run into more and more when we integrate other types of content, and you may have used a private access token when doing other things. The problem is with a private access token is that we need to store it securely, which means, of course, then we have to worry about encrypting it to store and, of course, decrypting it to use.
I see. Typically how this is done, and we don't want any kind of private tokens to be accessible in our app. Our code is in a public GitHub repo, excuse me. And so perhaps we would typically do like an environment file with environment variables or something like that. But here we would have to manage it on different servers. Maybe we need to set up different web servers to store different environment files on different places. And then work with that. So seems like we would need to set up some complicated infrastructure here just to use the Twitch API.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're serverless, right? So we don't have to manage any of those servers. If we did this, we would have to have the environment files. We'd have to manage the environment files themselves with different tokens for different environments, like stage and production and CI/CD. But we'd also have to manage getting the tokens to the web servers, and if they ever need to be rotated or updated, we need to make sure that all that stuff goes. And I've worked with these systems before, and there are systems that'll do that for you, but the easiest way is not to have that and not to have to do it at all, right? And so the good news is that Realm can store environment variables. They're called values, including securely storing what they call secrets, like this private token.
Well, that sounds great, Shiri, because it provides us this way of automatically encrypting and decrypting those tokens, so we don't have to worry about writing that logic ourselves. It's limited access in terms of only people who need to have it can get it, and so folks can go and update the tokens and then not worry that someone's going to go in and have access to it that they shouldn't. And because it's stored only in Realm, we don't have to worry about managing different environment files or environment variables on multiple servers. It's centralized, so that way we can update it in one place, and then it's distributed to the different needs throughout our application, which is great for a static site like ours, where we have this logic kind of in one place, but who knows where we could be tomorrow.
Yeah, and you mentioned it was distributed, but it's distributed because you can use it in a function. It's not actually stored in a file on a web server. So yeah, so it can support our serverless needs, which is really, really awesome. So I want to show you how we would do that. So can you see my screen here?
Yes, I can.
All right, so here is the UI for Realm, which you can see is right next to the Atlas UI up there. So we're going to click on values over here in the corner. We're going to create a new value. We're going to name it. It's a secret, and so I'm going to type the secret and save. Now, functions can't use secrets directly, but they can use values. So we have to make a value that links to the secret. So this time, we're going to create a value. I'm going to give it a name. We just link to the secret we just made and save. Now we can use the value myPublicSecret in a function.
So is a value kind of like a function where you can just use it from client app code or anything like that?
No, you can only use it from inside of Realm, which is the beauty of it all, because even if someone, for example, hacks into the website and gets server access, or we're serverless with a static site, so if they can somehow hack access to the content in the S3 bucket, they still can't retrieve the token. They just get the website, which is something they'd get anyway.
Yeah, so it seems like there's nothing even for them to steal.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you made the function last time for the YouTube API call, so I'm going to make this one while you watch, and you just let me know if I'm doing something wacky. So I'm on the Realm UI. I click Functions, and then Create New Function. I'll give it a name. I'm just going to call it My Function. We can change it if we want, and then go to the function editor. Now, there's some boilerplate here, but I can see line 4 is where we can get a value. So I'm just going to delete all of this kind of boilerplate here and delete the first part, and then, I got to change var to const, and, put in the right value name, right? My public secret, and then return X, because that's the constant that we had. So did I do that right?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Great. Now this function just gets the value and returns it. So it's not complete if we wanted it to retrieve stuff from the Twitch API, but it's only a few more lines, and it's basically the similar code to what you showed before. Just retrieve the Twitch data and store it in Atlas.
Yeah, one thing I'm thinking about, Shiri, is what if we have different environments like staging, production, or CI/CD? How can we manage different versions of the same token?
Yeah, so this actually could be a function. Instead of doing everything and getting the data from Twitch and saving it, we could have that in a different function. And what we could have for this function is it just retrieves the token, and the site administrators can use this, use the editor to change the logic so that it will return whatever token is appropriate for the environment. And the great news is that doesn't only just work for different environments like staging or prod or CI/CD. It works for when you need to rotate a password too, right? So, I know that we always had to, after a year, a couple months, you have to change your token. You get rid of the old one and put in a new one. And this, you don't have to worry about managing it. It's stored in one place and it's stored centrally. So you don't have to worry about a web server having an old version of it. You don't even need to tell the developers. They're just the code still uses the function to get the token, and they get a new token.
Well, that's awesome because it looks so fast. You were able to put that together in just a couple minutes, so record time, honestly. And there was no need for us to manually encrypt or decrypt anything. Once the token was in there, it was stored securely. And it's centralized, which means, let's say we want to add more things in the future that use the token, we can just have it flow through Realm and continue to use those Realm functions. So we don't have to worry about starting new servers, needing to move environment files from one place to another. So it's very easy and centralized there. And if something were to change, let's say we wanted to roll those tokens like you were mentioning, we just update it in one place and it's reflected throughout the rest of our Realm needs, which is awesome. And it's automatically secure, meaning that no one who shouldn't have the token can get access to it. The developers can use tokens without needing to know what they are. So it's nice and secure in that way. So I think this is an awesome solution.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Of all the stuff we don't have to do and don't have to worry about is just done for us. And here's DevHub with Twitch videos.
Looks awesome. Awesome job.
Yeah, yeah. So I was chatting with our community team the other day, and as part of our engagement with the MongoDB community, we have community champions. Now, they're passionate, they're dedicated MongoDB advocates. I've met with them. They're amazing. They organize, they contribute, they create content. They really form the backbone of our community. MongoDB champions, I mean, how do you become one? Well, they're selected from the community by their peers in our community team. So how does this relate to us? I know you're asking. Well, in order to apply to become a champion, we'll need a web form. And I had Mike Walzer, our amazing designer, come up with this design. It's a little fuzzy because it's just a screenshot of a design. It's not live yet. But it's a very basic form, and we want the form action to be very basic too. Just email the response to our community team.
I mean, one concern is now this is going to be publicly accessible. We're going to have user supply data that they can enter into the form, and then we have to manage database connections because who knows how many people are going to want to use this form at one time. I'm no security or operations wizard, but this seems like a whole new set of problems we're going to have to solve.
I mean, it's just a basic web form with a basic emailing. How is that like this problematic?
Well, so obviously we're going to take in random data from strangers on the internet, right? We're going to process it and store it for these potential champions, but we need to validate that the data that's coming in is correct and it is valid, because people could try and use that form to attack us through something like a NoSQL injection or a JavaScript injection. So we're going to have to go ahead and process and store that data on our side.
Yeah, but there are libraries that help with that, right? Just escaping everything.
Sure. I mean, it would add a little bit of development time and it can be done. But we also have to manage things like operational scaling. So let's say that at different parts of the year, different people, different volumes of people are applying to become community champions. We have to be prepared for our infrastructure to handle this.
Yeah, I mean, this is yet another database connection, and we need to make sure that we're doing proper connection pooling so that we can scale. So that's another thing to add in. I see where this is kind of getting complicated. I thought it was just a basic form, but it gets more complex. And one more thing, I just remembered not to make it more complex, but Mike did tell me that the community team was wondering on the champions biography pages when we get that part of the site up, could we list their GitHub repos?
So now we're also going to integrate with GitHub.
Well, it wasn't mentioned in our original scope, so I'm going to push back on that. But that's going to be in the next iteration, I'm sure. So we should be prepared for more integrations in future projects.
All right. Well, fortunately, Realm can take care of this through what's called third-party services. So remember that MongoDB Atlas is exposed to Realm via a built-in service. So third-party services are other integrations that are native. So there are things like AWS and GitHub, which are built in and will show in the UI. But there's also things like Twilio, Stripe, and HTTP in general that we can work with.
Oh, that's great. That HTTP can kind of do anything that we want, even if it's not those other four sites. And because Realm is serverless, it manages the connections to the Atlas database, automatically scaling it. So for example, like you were saying before, seasonality, right? I expect a lot of the form traffic the day of the deadline. Everyone's going to be filling it out at the last minute. And we absolutely need all of the sessions, the submissions to be recorded. I don't want to have to tell amazing MongoDB folks that we lost their application. Whoops, sorry.
Yeah, one more thing I did want to touch on was, again, going back to that user supply data. So MongoDB Realm and MongoDB in general make it a bit easier for us to prevent things like a NoSQL or JavaScript injection.
Oh, how does it do that?
Well, Realm does some parsing and escaping needed to handle things in a function as input parameters for us. So we can simply use MongoDB's insert one command to insert into Atlas. And as long as we're working with the data in an object kind of way, then we protect ourselves from doing something like accidentally using a $where or some of the other functions mentioned in the docs, which I can send you after this meeting, that may expose us to injection attacks.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember how easy it was saving the database. You didn't have to do any text parsing or munging. You just like took the input and did an insert one. But it's nice to know that you could do that if you wanted to, but you kind of have to do work to do the traditional method of string parsing and $where and everything. So that part is easy, but how hard is it to set up the integration with Amazon's simple email service?
Well, it's simple. Let me show you. So if you could see my screen, I click third-party services in the Realm UI, and then I want to add a new service. So I'll click that. I'll click in AWS as the option, and I'll give it a service name of my choice. And I'll go ahead and I'll add my access key and secret from AWS. The secret's already a Realm secret, so I'm just going to pick that one. And boom, there it is, set up. I can double check my configuration, and it's ready to use in a function like this one.
Oh, there it is.
So I put together a little thing to send an email to the community team. So on line 2, we use this third-party service, and we get the SES object. And once we have the SES object, we'll call send email. and that's going to go ahead and send that email right to the community team. And that's all.
Okay, so send email. Did you have to write the send email function though?
No, that's something that is coming right from Amazon Simple Email Service API. It's available in the docs, and I can send you a little bit on that after.
Oh yeah, definitely send me that link. Great. So this is fantastic. We were really, it was easy to, you still had to make the web form like you usually do, but it was really easy to send the contents as an email using that third-party integration. We didn't have to worry about scaling. It's provided out of the box in Realm. We didn't have to worry about, scalability at different times of the year, like when our application is due, and there's going to be a big rush of that. We're protected by default, which is really, really amazing. We don't need to do all that parsing and string munging and escaping and, oh, I forgot to escape, white space or semicolon or whatever. And we don't need to worry about all of this like glue and plumbing. It just works with these built-in integrations. That is very, very exciting.
So we have all of this fantastic content. Now folks can apply to become a community champion for DevHub, and it's amazing, Shiri, but not everyone is coming to DevHub. I was talking to our developer advocate team. They write a bunch of great content on here, and they want to make sure that that content is accessible on other sites and that we can syndicate content from DevHub to other things like Dev.to and Medium, where people are reading other technical articles.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that people have been doing for a long time, right? They just use RSS feeds. So we can just set up like all the RSS feeds for all the different, subjects and topics so that people can pick what content they want to syndicate where.
Yeah, we just need to be careful because our site is statically generated. So at build time, we would previously consider creating all of these RSS feeds, but we're going to need something a little bit more dynamic. We don't want a ton of endpoints. We don't want to raise our build time. And we might not even use all of the RSS feeds we would generate at build time. So we need to be a bit more dynamic in that regard.
Oh, right. We don't just want to build stuff, take the time to build stuff, and then we have to wait on the build, and then we're not even using it. So we got all these endpoints here that aren't used, and like say Medium or Dev.to or whatever, they're just going to get the content, but we don't want to build all those extra endpoints, huh?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's time for us to finally set up a web server, expose an API endpoint, and have that interact with DevHub data to set up this need and generate those RSS feeds on the fly.
That does sound neat. And right now we have a few different categories, like what programming language the content uses and what products are involved, like Atlas and Realm and Charts. And so if we added another category, like maybe author or something else, right, transactions, then we can easily accommodate it with minimal coding because it's just changing the query of the API endpoint and the results.
Yeah, and that's a bit more scalable than trying to statically build all of these combinations of RSS feeds. And we can do things like use custom parameters. So that way folks can, in the future, if we have different categories or different ways we expose our syndicated content, that we can easily take advantage of that. But one question I have here is about authentication. Like, do we want anyone to be able to syndicate content from the Dev Hub? Maybe certain sites? I mean, what do you think?
Good question. I'll look into that and see if that's a requirement or not. The good news is I've been thinking about this and whether or not we need authentication against an API endpoint. There's actually a really easy way to get an API endpoint without having to do all the code around it. Big surprise, it's in Realm. It's Realm webhooks. So we can set up a webhook that's tied to Atlas. Now, we've done a lot of using APIs with Realm, but a webhook lets our site be an API. It's certainly faster to set it up in Realm than to build your own API. And then we can handle any RSS feed. Like if somebody wanted an RSS feed with a few different categories, somebody wants all the JavaScript articles and videos and podcasts that also have Atlas and Realm talked about it.
I see. That's brilliant. I mean, that gives us more flexibility in setting up the logic that we need without bloating our build time. So that way we can keep it nice and short. And if we do need to lock things down in the future, we can go ahead and take advantage of the built-in authentication from Realm. And of course, we can use the other Realm features that we've been looking at, like Atlas and other third-party integrations.
Yeah, it just works with everything. That's great. So here's how we can set up a webhook in Realm. We're going to add a new third-party service. We're going to click on Add a Service, HTTP for the endpoint, and name it. And then we're going to add an incoming webhook. And all we do is we give it a name. We set the HTTP method, and in this case, it's going to be GET. We're going to save it, and now we're in the function editor. So I'm just going to remove some of the boilerplate. They've got some good comments here. And this is where we'd write our function logic. We'd use the MongoDB service to query Atlas for the content that we want to return in the RSS feed. The query is going to depend on what filters the user wants. So, maybe they want articles but not videos that cover topics with JavaScript and Realm. And then this is also where that we would format the results, the query results, as an RSS feed, and then just return that feed. And that's our webhook.
Seems simple enough. I mean, we quickly were able to set up a public HTTPS endpoint in this way, which is awesome. And what's great is we can easily connect it to MongoDB Atlas, so we can pull and store data as we need, as well as other third-party services should we want those in the future, which is great. This was done really quickly in maybe 2 minutes or so. So it was simple and easy to set up. We didn't need authentication today, but we can add it in pretty quickly. And of course, it's included in Realm. It's part of the free tier. It's part of that 1 million requests. So it's, again, within our needs.
And I love that you were like, oh, it's just a publicly accessible HTTPS endpoint. And I feel like the S is doing a lot of a lot of hiding there, and secure by default it's my jam. So yeah, so we didn't really we kind of touched on authentication. I don't think we have time to really go into it, but in Realm, you can manage users, and Realm will manage the passwords for you, which you can use for database connectivity or even users in your app. So I've developed, I've worked on mobile apps that use Realm to store their users. So user where you create a user and log in and whatever and change your password, that can all be done via Realm. So you don't have to worry about hashing the password and comparing the hashes. Realm does that all for you. And it's really, really nice. We did a lot of screenshots of, and screen sharing of the web UI, but there's also a very robust command line interface that can be used. So you don't have to worry that you're going to be, taking your hand off the keyboard and doing mouse clicks if you're kind of a keyboard warrior. So yeah, Realm for websites is really fully functional.
So to recap some of the things that we talked about here today, Shiri, so Realm has tons of features for website management that we can take advantage of, all available from the free tier. So database integration we talked about, functions, triggers, values and secrets, and operational scaling, just to name a few.
Yeah, and we talked about third-party service integrations, right, with GitHub and AWS and Twilio and Stripe, and also any HTTP endpoint. We talked about being a third-party service by making an API with a webhook. We talked about a little bit, touched on authentication and the command line interface. So what are the next steps?
Well, we want to encourage anyone to try it today. Of course, we've been talking about this free tier available at cloud.mongodb.com, so sign up. And if you have questions or want to learn more, feel free to visit the MongoDB Developer Hub.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.